Aha, Sega Saturn. I did say, right, that my next Sonic game for the channel was going to be on the Saturn. Obviously, that doesn't leave you with too many choices, so it was a little bit obvious, but yeah, Sonic 3D Blast. Now, of course, I could have done the thing here where I sat through the whole intro and was like, we're going to reveal what game it is by the time we get through that, but it's in the title of the video, isn't it? Speaking of the intro, here it is. So I opted to play the Saturn version rather than the Genesis version, although I've been thinking about maybe for the long plays doing the Genesis version as well, but probably not a commentated version. The games are probably like about 90% the same. Kind of a weird close-up on that flicky there. Huh. Anyways, yeah, they're about 90% the same. The only real gameplay difference is the special stages, but the graphics are enhanced on this one, as is the music. So I prefer this one. Yeah, here we are, Sonic 3D Blast. Gonna be honest, not one of the ones that I played the most, and actually as a kid I never owned the Saturn version. I owned the Genesis version and the like Windows 95 version, believe it or not, which is kind of weird. I believe that version is actually, if memory serves, I got rid of it a long time ago. I think the PC version is actually closer to the Saturn version. But if you compare the two, you can see a lot of differences in the graphics department. And also the music looks really, really good. So what is Sonic 3D Blast, for those of you who haven't played it? Well, it is a 3D isometric Sonic game, meaning that sort of diagonal perspective. It's a little bit tricky to control. Yeah, there's not really any way around that. Even once you're used to it, it's still tricky. But we're going to get through it. I've obviously completed the entire game, and it's definitely one that you should try. It's not the best Sonic game by any means, but it's sort of an oddity, so definitely worth checking out. The way you get to the special stages in this game, for those who don't know, is you have to find Tails and Knuckles sort of hidden in the levels, and they'll take you to the special stage. That's funny, I always loved the 3D Sonic render on the Saturn. I think it looks really, really nice. It's got sort of a nice style to it. So this obviously looks very similar to the Sonic 2 special stages, and the Genesis special stages are completely different, because obviously the Genesis could not render this. That said, this basically just plays like a much less responsive version of the Sonic 2 special stages, so I almost prefer the Genesis ones, although this is pretty cool. Little fourth wall breaking. Yeah, there's something about that 3D model that I just find really charming. But yeah, these special stages kind of suck, honestly. But it's alright. They're not very difficult, though, which is the good thing. Some more than others, but you probably won't have too much of a problem if you were good at the Sonic 2 ones, like beating most of these on the first try. You see how laggy the controls are. Like, I'm trying to do the whole, like, swerve left, swerve right thing, and it just doesn't. Anyways, there's Emerald number 1. In all its 3D polygonal glory. The one thing that does really suck about the Saturn version of the game is the really long load times. So, like, check this out. Yep. Yep. Okay, we're back. You'll notice that when you exit the special stage, everything resets, all your rings, any shields that you're carrying, etc. So, watch out for that. And this is kind of neat. Unless I am wrong, which is very possible, but I don't think so. This is the introduction of the homing attack that would basically become a staple of all the future 3D Sonic games. And because of the trickiness of actually lining up what you're trying to hit, it is incredibly useful. So the gameplay loop, essentially, is you go through to different areas, you have to rescue 5 flickies who are trapped inside the badniks, and you can only progress once you've rescued all of them. It's okay. That's all really. It would have been cool to have like some levels where you just run through, and in fact there are towards the end of the game. We'll see those, but yeah, I mean it's not the best Sonic game, definitely, but I guess you can kind of appreciate them trying to do something different. And they didn't call this Sonic 4. Incidentally, this is a way better game than Sonic 4, but then again, what isn't? So, yeah. Now, there's actually kind of a cool thing about this this game in relation to, like, the development and everything. There's a channel on YouTube, which I shouldn't introduce yet, because you might click off my video and go to that one, but whatever, called Game Hut. It's run by John Burton, who was the founder of Telltale Games, the guys that made this one. And he essentially just goes through like how he made various parts of this game and other games. It's pretty interesting if you're at all interested in game development. Also seems like a really like chill, kind of cool guy. He's like a really soft-spoken British dude, so there's that. But anyways, worth checking out, and gives a lot of insight into how he coded things on the Genesis version specifically. Now, one thing that we're going to find is that, especially later on in the game, the flickies sort of wandering after you hit the badniks is not a great thing. So you want to grab them as quickly as possible after they get freed. Especially the red ones, which we'll see, give it time. You'll notice, like, even with like the amount of practice that I did on this game, there's still times when I'm just like jumping around like an idiot trying to hit the stupid ring or whatever. Yeah, we'll do it with Knuckles again. As far as I know, it actually does not matter at all if you go with Knuckles or Tails. It's just you can generally find both of them. But you can only do one... Well, you can only get one emerald per level. So if we were to go and find Tails and do the Tails special stage, it would just give us an extra life. So, not really worth it. I guess one thing that this does have on the Sonic 2 ones is the changing perspective, like the levels actually do move. Instead of just being like a pseudo 3D, they're an actual 3D, so there's that, but yeah, generally just, yeah, I don't care for these that much, honestly. It's okay though, we only have to do 7 of them, so... But there were many failed runs at the beginning because I thought I could just, you know, weave in between the bombs, but really the controls aren't responsive enough to do that in a lot of cases, so that's why you'll see me just jump sometimes. There was some trial and error, let's put it that way. But that's kind of neat, I suppose, right? Now, another thing about this game, most of the Sonic games that I've done so far, well, with the exception of Sonic Adventure, which is obviously quite a bit longer, have been in 2 parts. This one's going to be in 3, because it's actually a little bit longer of a game. Took me about an hour and a half for my complete playthrough, so that divides easily enough into 3 different parts. And then, of course, once those are uploaded, the long play version, all the way through, no commentary. I haven't really mentioned it yet, but if you go on my channel, there is a playlist called called Just Sonic Long Plays or something like that, where I've been compiling all the it's Sonic Long Plays. Surprise! And the plan is to eventually have that be basically all the Sonic games, which I think would be pretty cool. And then they're in release order, so as of right now, it's like Sonic the Hedgehog for Genesis, Sonic the Hedgehog for Game Gear, and then it probably goes straight to... I don't know what's next, because I haven't actually done Sonic 2 or 3 yet. Well, I actually did Sonic 3 and Knuckles a long time ago, but we're not counting that one. So I guess one of the sort of admirable things about this game is how they tried as best they could to sort of keep the sense of speed. It does end up making the there's tails, but we're not going to actually use them. If you think about the other Sonic games that had been in 3D, or is it other Sonic game? That being Sonic Labyrinth on the Game Gear. That game was ridiculously slow, and so this one was quite a bit faster. Although, of course, we really wouldn't get a full-speed 3D Sonic game until Sonic Adventure. That was one of the greatest parts of that game, was that it was really the first time we saw a full 3D Sonic game that kept the sense of speed from the two-dimensional ones. The unfortunate thing about this, of course, is that the greater speed makes things a little bit tricky to control sometimes. There's the red one that I was talking about. Always grab the red one right away. See what I mean about the music, though? It's quite good, isn't it? Actually, the second level has my favorite music from the whole game, so we'll be seeing that shortly. Worth noting that this is a game where there are 3 acts rather than 2. However, Act 3 is always a boss fight. So it's not like a complete Sonic 1 style Act 3. And the bosses are, they're okay. They're not the best bosses in the series, but some of them are a little bit interesting. By the way, I didn't mention it, this little world map just sort of kind of shows you where you are. You're not able to, like, Donkey Kong Country it. Kind of similar to Sonic on the Game Gear, actually. I don't know why it makes like a spring sound. Weird. I will say the sprite work in this game, as these are all sprites, they're not, well, I take it back. They're 3D renders converted to sprites, sort of like the, well, Donkey Kong Country style. But they all look pretty nice. They're kind of stylized enough that they don't just look like, you know, low resolution and horrible. Like the Eggman / Robotnik sprite. I don't know, there's something about it that looks kind of nice. Alright, so now my favorite zone? Yeah, maybe. At least my favorite music track. Check this out. Yeah, pretty great, huh? Now, another thing that you're going to notice if you pay attention is that a lot of the enemies are actually the same enemies from earlier levels, just sprite swapped. So pay attention to like the way that the enemies move, specifically the gators and the bees. There will be other enemies that have sort of that same AI, if you want to call it AI. I do kind of like this mechanic. It's kind of cool. A little bit tricky to control, but that's the whole game, isn't it? Ugh. Did I mention, by the way, you have to have 50 rings to activate it, but kind of a no-brainer on that one if you're a Sonic fan. So I guess the stage looks a little bit different. I actually don't know off the top of my head if the Knuckles and Tails stages are any different in terms of the gameplay. They're probably very similar, if anything. And that's kind of how it was in the Genesis version as well. Ooh. Thanks, Sonic. Definitely see what I mean, though, like, about these being a lot easier than the Sonic 2 ones. And hey, with a few bomb patterns taken from Sonic 2. There we go. Not too bad, already at 3. Oh, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and spoil it now. No Super Sonic, unfortunately. However, that actually brings me back to John Burton. He actually still has the original like source code and files for when they're creating the game. Went back and created what is essentially a ROM hack of like a special edition or a director's cut where you actually can become supersonic. Which is kind of neat. Maybe someday I'll do that one, but as of right now, since it's kind of unofficial. Is it unofficial? I mean, it's by the original creator, but it's not by the original publisher. But regardless, we should focus on the game at hand. I think it's kind of funny, by the way, that the like spike balls, both the ones that are swinging around on the chains and the ones that are just sitting there are like super rounded to the point where they're not actually spikes. Like those ones aren't. But look at those ones. Fire shield, obviously super useful here. And although that fog effect is kind of neat, it really is not that great because it obscures your vision so much. And you'll notice when I have the fire shield, the flickies also have the fire shield. Because normally, if they get hit, they sort of fall off and stop following you. And you gotta go capture them again, and yeah. Yeah, see what I mean about the fog? Like, yeah, it looks kind of neat, but yeah, I definitely don't want that. This spinny thing really is fairly tricky to control. You gain momentum really quickly. And then obviously bouncing off the walls doesn't help. Or does help, depending on what you're trying to do, I guess. There we go, 100. You know, that's Sonic. He keeps it 100 at all times. I sound so hip when I talk like that. Anyways, that level's done. We're in for a real treat on the next level where we have some isometric platforming. Yeah. It's as joyous as it sounds. This song, by the way. So good. But the good news is that after playing for a little while, you start to sort of get the hang of the movement. And there will still be moments where you're like just jumping and constantly missing. Extra life. But it gets better. Fortunately, the rain doesn't cancel out the fire shield. Yeah, so that was fun, right? Good news is, get the right angle, you can pretty much make it. And they were kind enough to put a spring on that part because, ugh, that would have been nightmarish. Could be, there it is. Like, I know there's an item here. Those are the, like, Sonic emblems. Actually, in the director's cut, you have to collect all of them in order to, like 100% the game, but in this one, fortunately, you don't. It's eh. There we go. Little mice popping out of the pots. Kind of weird. Oh, by the way, worth mentioning, I guess I didn't mention it yet. This game is available on Steam, but curiously they chose to only put up the Genesis version. I guess it's because, hello? I mean, I guess because they have a lot of those other, like, Sega Genesis classics on Steam. But it would have been kind of cool if they had put this version instead, I think. But then again, I'm also one of the people who thinks that it would be cool if they put Sonic R on Steam, so maybe my opinion is not that valid. You know, another thing that I don't care for about these is that they don't significantly change, like, what they look like. You know, you'd be surprised how effective a simple palette swap can be. Just look at every single beat-em-up game ever made. But alas. Yeah, see, right there. In Sonic 2, I would have been able to maneuver that, but not in this. It's also kind of weird. You'll notice there's, like, momentum, because you actually seem to run faster downhill. But you gotta wonder what the point of that is, but... Should be number 4, right? As with any Sonic game, it definitely is very helpful to try and get the emeralds as quickly as possible, so that you don't have to be, you know, running around hunting for Tails and Knuckles when you get to the later stages. As you have probably noticed, by the way, the encounters with Tails and Knuckles sometimes won't appear until after you've sort of gone into a secret area. So, for instance, we were obviously down here before. Also, the extra life also respawns. But, yeah, so that's one of the ways that they're kind of hidden. Sometimes they're just there in plain sight, sometimes you gotta search for them, and then sometimes they are in plain sight, but they won't appear until after you've sort of backtracked. It is possible to get that in one go, I just keep missing it, I guess. And once again, no platforming, thank you. I'm just gonna jump all the way over. There are a couple spots where you do actually have to, like, precisely jump onto a platform, and I wouldn't recommend it, but it is necessary a couple times. I think the fact that it is optional most of the time just shows that they knew it was very tricky. Alrighty. So let us go on to boss number 2, and then we will call it for episode 1. This one's kind of cool. It'll probably remind you of Sonic and Knuckles. Except for it's like a knight, but it has like cat claws. I don't know what's going on with it, but hey. Also, I do like the way that his basically gets cracks on his windshield, essentially. It's kind of funny. And of course, it is an indicator of how much health he has left, I guess. That's a wrap. Hope you guys enjoyed episode 1. Be back next week, probably, with episode 2. Till then, thanks for watching.